in which an affair unfolds, and we see the damage wrought upon the scorned. Chapter 2. After the doctor left, Dolly arrived. She knew that there was to be a consultation that day, and though she had only recently got up from a confinement, had given birth to a girl at the end of winter. Though she had many griefs and cares of her own, she left her nursing baby and a daughter who had fallen ill, and called to learn Kitty's fate, which was being decided just then. "Well, so?" she said, coming into the drawing room and not talking or taking off her hat. "You're all cheerful. Must be good news." They tried to tell her what the doctor had told them, but it turned out that though the doctor had spoken very well and at length, it was quite impossible to repeat what he had said. The only interesting thing was that it had been decided to go abroad. Dolly sighed involuntarily. Her best friend, her sister, was leaving, and there was no cheer in her own life. Her relations with Stepan Arkadyevich after the reconciliation had become humiliating. The welding done by Anna had not proved strong, and the family accord had broken again at the same place. There was nothing definite, but Stepan Arkadyevich was almost never at home. There was also almost never any money in the house, and Dolly was constantly tormented by suspicions of his unfaithfulness, which this time she tried to drive away, fearing the already familiar pain of jealousy. The first outburst of jealousy, once lived through, could not come again, and even the discovery of unfaithfulness could not affect her as it had the first time. Such a discovery would now only deprive her of her family habits, and she allowed herself to be deceived, despising him and most of all herself for this weakness. On top of that, the care of a large family constantly tormented her. Either the nursing of the baby did not go well, or the nanny left, or, as now, one of the children fell ill. "And how are all yours?" her mother asked. "Ah, maman, you have enough grief of your own. Lily has fallen ill, and I'm afraid it's scarlet fever. I came now just to find out the news, and then, God forbid, if it is scarlet fever, I'll stay put and not go anywhere." The old prince also came out of his study after the doctor's departure, and, having offered Dolly his cheek and said a word to her, turned to his wife. "What's the decision? Are you going? Well, and what do you intend to do with me?" "I think you should stay, Alexander," said his wife. "As you wish." "Maman, why shouldn't Papa come with us?" said Kitty. "It'll be more cheerful for him and for us." The old prince stood up and stroked Kitty's hair with his hand. She raised her face and, smiling forcedly, looked at him. It always seemed to her that he understood her better than anyone else in the family, though he spoke little with her. As the youngest, she was her father's favorite, and it seemed to her that his love for her gave him insight. When her glance now met his kindly blue eyes, gazing intently at her, it seemed to her that he saw right through her and understood all the bad that was going on inside her. Blushing, she leaned towards him, expecting a kiss, but he only patted her head and said, "These stupid chignons. You can't even get to your real daughter, but only caress the hair of dead wenches. Well, Dolinka, he turned to his eldest daughter, what's your trump up to? Nothing, Papa, answered Dolly, understanding that he meant her husband. He goes out all the time. I almost never see him, she could not help adding with a mocking smile. So he hasn't gone to the country yet to sell the wood? No, he keeps getting ready to. Really, said the prince. And I too must get myself ready. I'm listening, ma'am, he turned to his wife as he sat down. And as for you, Katya, he added to his youngest daughter, some time or other you'll have to wake up one fine morning and say to yourself, why, I'm perfectly well and cheerful, and I'm going to go with Papa again for an early morning walk in the frost, eh? What her father said seemed so simple, yet Kitty became confused and bewildered at these words, like a caught criminal. Yes, he knows everything, understands everything, and with these words he's telling me that, though I'm ashamed, I must get over my shame. She could not pluck up her spirits enough to make any reply. She tried to begin, but suddenly burst into tears and rushed from the room. You and your jokes, the princess flew at her husband. You always, she began her reproachful speech. The prince listened for quite a long time to her rebukes and kept silent, but his face frowned more and more. She's so pitiful, the poor dear, so pitiful, and you don't feel how any hint at that cause of it hurts her. Ah, to be so mistaken about other people, said the princess, and by the change in her tone, Dolly and the prince realized that she was speaking of Vronsky. I don't understand why there are no laws against such vile, ignoble people. I can't listen, the prince said gloomily, getting up from his armchair and making as if to leave, but stopping in the doorway. There are laws, dearest, and since you're calling me out on it, I'll tell you who is to blame for it all. You and you alone. There are and always have been laws against such young devils. Yes, ma'am, and if it hadn't been for what should never have been, I, old as I am, would have challenged him to a duel, that fop. Yes, so treat her now. Bring in your charlatans. The prince seemed to have much more to say, but as soon as the princess heard his tone, she humbled herself and repented, as always with serious questions. Alexander, Alexander, she whispered, moving closer, and burst into tears. As soon as she began to cry, the prince also subsided. He went over to her. Well, there, it's hard for you too, I know. What can we do? It's no great calamity. God is merciful, give thanks, he said, no longer knowing what he was saying, in response to the princess' wet kiss, which he felt on his hand, and he left the room. When Kitty left the room in tears, Dolly, with her motherly, family habit of mind, saw at once that there was woman's work to be done, and she prepared to do it. She took off her hat and, morally rolling up her sleeves, prepared for action. During her mother's attack on her father, she tried to restrain her mother as far as daughterly respect permitted. During the prince's outburst, she kept silent. She felt shame for her mother and tenderness toward her father for that instant return of his kindness, but when her father went out, she got ready to do the main thing necessary, to go to Kitty and comfort her. I've long been meaning to tell you, Maman. Do you know that Levine was going to propose to Kitty when he was here the last time? He told Stiva so. Well, what of it? I don't understand. Maybe Kitty refused him. She didn't tell you? No. She told me nothing either about the one or about the other. She's too proud. But I know it's all because of that. Yes. Just imagine if she refused Levine. and she wouldn't have refused him if it hadn't been for the other one. I know. And then that one deceived her so terribly. It was too awful for the princess to think of how guilty she was before her daughter, and she became angry. Ah, I understand nothing any more. Nowadays they all want to live by their own reason. They tell their mothers nothing, and then look. I'll go to her, Maman. Go. Am I forbidding you? Said the mother. If you enjoy this format, please leave a like and subscribe and return tomorrow for the next chapter.